Welcome. This is the Glendale Water and Power Commission meeting. Today is Monday, March 1st, 2021. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations from LA County Health Department, the Glendale Water and Power Commission meeting will be available to the public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. The meeting can be viewed on local cable, Charter Cable 6, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Streaming online, https www.glendale.ca.gov/government/public meeting portal. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. 818-937-8100. And again, welcome to the meeting. First item, please.
First item is roll call. Commissioner Jasmadarian.
Here.
Commissioner Kadikian.
Here.
Commissioner Law.
Present.
Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
President Flanagan.
Here. Next item.
Our next item is 2 GWP Commission staff comments.
Commissioner Law, do you have any comments?
I think I'm going to hold on to my comments until later in the meeting. Thank you, though.
Very good. Commissioner Jasmadarian?
No comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Peterson?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Kadikian?
No comments. Thank you.
Very good. I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on this month since we last met and reflect on the Texas power crisis. And our Texas is very unique, a lot of very different situations, but certainly as utility commissioners and us running a public utility, I think it's important to take note of what happened there. There was an interesting article in National Public Radio talking about how we really need to harden the entire power grid, coast to coast, a massive investment of capital. And so I won't take much time. Everybody's heard the horror stories of the number of deaths, hypothermia cases, all sorts of awful things arose, people without water, people without food. The problem is still not cleaned up. And so it just begs the question, are we sufficiently hardened as a power system? And what might we do to become more reliant? I see that in April, there's a discussion of our annual reliability report. Maybe that's the time to address some of these hardening issues, but we certainly need to take stock of what happened in Texas and be prepared for whatever type of climate crisis could be inflicted upon us here in the city of Glendale. Thank you. Are there any staff comments at this time?
President Flanagan, this is Michael DeGhetto. I'm the interim general manager for this month, and I don't have any comments. So we're ready to go.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Next item.
Our next item is 3 reports. 3A, the Glendale Energy Center Sql update.
You'll just give me a moment. I'm going to try and share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Boy. I apologize. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Perhaps, I'm sorry. Mark, would you be able to share yours?
Sure, let me try.
good.
Okay. That I stressed over that more than anything else today. So my name is Mark Young. I am the Assistant General Manager of Power Management, and this will be the Glendale Water and Power Energy Center California Environmental Quality Act update. So this is going to be a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. We're not planning to go too deeply into the content of the EIR Environmental Impact Report today. We'll do that at a later time. For today, we wanted to provide you some background of the project, discuss where we are in terms of developing the project alternatives, and explain what the next steps are and what the role of the GWP Commission and the public can play in this process. So we're not changing the name, but this is, since the Glendale Water and Power Grayson facility was typically a power plant, we're now calling we're calling it the Glendale Energy Center, which is going to include thermal and battery storage. The oldest units at the power plant were pre-World War II, and the newest unit of number 9 was built in the early 2000s, with most of the equipment built in the 70s. Under the original environmental impact report, this was the modernization suggestion of the EIR, which was 262 megawatts of thermal generation that was going to replace units 1 through 8 with 4 large capacity turbine generators, 2 simple cycle, and 2 combined cycle. Council agreed that with the recommendation of GWP was to proceed and develop in the development phase of the project, including development plans, engineering work, permitting, and the environmental reviews under CEQA. So I'd like to turn it over to Christine to provide a little bit of information about CEQA. Christine? Think she might be on mute.
Excuse me. Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. I just want to give you a very brief background on the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. I know many of you are already familiar with it, but essentially the key thing about CEQA is that it's a disclosure process. It requires state and local government agencies to inform decision makers and the public about potentially significant environmental impacts of a project and to reduce those significant impacts to the extent feasible. So if there are any potential impacts, a public agency must prepare an environmental impact report, or EIR, which has in-depth studies about the potential impacts, measures to reduce or avoid them, and it analyzes project alternatives. The key feature is, again, it's a disclosure document, so it provides for public review and input. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the steps of the CEQA process, from the initial study all the way through the certification. And the CEQA process really is all about public disclosure and input. Again, that's just really key. So for the Grayson Repowering Project, as many of the commissioners know, this commission played a very important role in the process of allowing the public to gather and to provide their input and comments on the Grayson Repowering EIR document. And it was very successful. I recall that for our initial scoping meeting, there were maybe 1 or 2 members of the public that showed up for our meeting. And by the time we got to the public comment period, we had over 1,000 submitted and really great participation in the GWP Commission meeting and in the council certification hearing. So that's really a success, because when you have the public input in the process, it makes for a project that has the public input, desires, and buy-in, which really makes for a more successful project. So for the Grayson Repowering, we made it all the way through the final step, which is the certification hearing for the EIR, and that took place in April of 2018. Next slide, please. So just to recap, in April of 2018, we went before this commission and then to council to certify the EIR for the 262 megawatt project that Mr. Young described. But the council decided not to take any action on the EIR and ordered a 90-day pause for GWP to go out and explore if there are any other alternatives, cleaner alternatives to what was being proposed to repower at Grayson. So GWP immediately put together a clean energy RFP that was issued to seek out really a broad range without any restriction what clean energy could be brought into Glendale. Projects could be as small as 1 megawatt, and really one of the key requirements was that the project had to be deliverable, had to be energy that actually able to be brought into Glendale, not reliant on some future transmission or what have you. So GWP received 36 proposals. Those were thoroughly vetted for environmental attributes, reliability, feasibility, administrative burden of implementation, the experience of the proposer. Those proposals were modeled by Ascend Analytics, the city's consultant, to make sure that it would work together to meet the city's energy needs. And then ultimately in July of 2020, this commission will recall the city put together an integrated resource plan that went to the commission and then to the council for approval. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Young to describe the IRP at a very high level.
Sure. The modeling and the results of the integrated resource plan recommended a combination of clean energy resources and local generation at Grayson to provide for the necessary reliability. City Council directed GWP to pursue the integrated resource plan recommendations. Council directed GWP to negotiate with the clean energy vendors and directed GWP to begin with the limited notice to proceed phase of the developing of the Wärtsilä internal combustion engines and the Tesla bulk electric storage system at Grayson. GWP has been very busy working on developing contracts for the distributed energy resources, as well as working on the limited notice to proceed phase at the Grayson plant. So what's the current status? GWP and its owner's engineering team have been hard at work on all these details and need to be worked out in order to develop the new alternatives. This includes general arrangements, drawings, pipings and instrumentation design, geotechnical evaluation, fire design criteria, developing plans to separate number 9 unit from the remainder of the units so that we can continue to operate after the units 1 through 8 have been removed, developing plans for the control room, developing a new switching station that will improve our reliability of our distribution system. And finally, as we will discuss in more detail, we're working on developing a few variations to the layouts of the Wärtsilä internal combustion engines and the Tesla bulk energy storage system. So through the development and engineering process, GWP and the limited notice to proceed team have developed several different alternatives to the project. Each of these alternatives will be evaluated under CEQA, and the public will have an opportunity to comment on them. We'd like to explain the commission the alternatives at the Glen City Council for us to evaluate, and they'll be included. These parts of the power island and the new generating facility would be common to all. So we were looking at 75 megawatts of Tesla battery that was going to produce up to 300 megawatt hours. We felt best that we would start out with 50 megawatts, 200 megawatt hours, and then put the 25 megawatts in at a later time. The Glendale switching station would be common, and that, like I said, would increase the reliability of the distribution systems. There's going to be new buildings associated with the plant operations, so you'd have your operations center, your maintenance facilities, and we need to be able to retain and operate the existing number 9 unit. So GWP presented various alternatives to the city at its 12/15/2020 meeting, and the City Council directed GWP to proceed with the evaluation of alternatives 6, 7A, and 8. Alternative 6 would be the 5 Wärtsilä engines located on the south side near the Verdugo Wash, and the Tesla batteries going north. Alternative 7A would be the same Wärtsilä engines and Tesla batteries, but they would swap locations. And alternative 8 would be to study the life extension of the existing 8A, 8BC units while keeping the Tesla battery. So currently, GWP and its engineering and environmental teams are working to complete the engineering work and the environmental reviews of these three alternatives, which will be presented to the public for review and comment. Christine?
So the next steps in the Sql process are, as Mr. Young said, complete the engineering studies, the environmental analysis, and air permitting for the new alternatives. Then those new alternatives will be circulated for public comment, and the public will have the opportunity to provide their input. Then the city team will respond to the public comments and prepare the final EIR, which will incorporate all those comments and responses to comments. Then we will have a GWP commission recommendation regarding the final EIR, and then ultimately the final EIR will go back to City Council for certification. So here's the proposed schedule for how we envision this will roll out. It's a little bit subject to change in that, for example, we don't know how many public comments we're going to get, so that will affect how long it takes to review them and respond to them, because each and every one will be reviewed thoroughly and responded to. So we are hoping that we can circulate the EIR alternatives for public comment in mid-April. And then we would envision bringing back a presentation to this commission, because again, this commission played such an important role in bringing the public together and providing an opportunity to consider the EIR. We'd like to bring it back to you during the comment period, and that would be, we think, in May of 2021. The comment deadline would be in June of 2021. Then again, as I said, GWP will be responding to those comments, presenting the final EIR back to this commission for its recommendation in July, and then the EIR hearing would be in August. So assuming certification and approval of a project, the full notice to proceed would commence in the beginning of 2021. And this is timing to our deadline to notify the AQMD of what we intend to do with the existing equipment, because we need to let them know by July of 2022 under their new air quality regulations. Next slide, please. I think that might be it. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions, or we can return to slides if there are questions about a particular slide. Thank you very much. President Flanagan, I think you might be on mute if you're talking.
Thank you very much. I guess it takes us back to mute periodically, doesn't it? I'm sorry about that. I was praising your presentation and the clarity. Thank you very much for that. So let's have questions and comments from commissioners. Commissioner Lal.
It does. It mutes you. So I'm now unmuted.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation and for bringing this update to us. I appreciate your comments highlighting the role of the commission. I believe I'm the only commissioner right now who was serving in 2018 when we had the hearings about the EIR at that point. And we certainly had a very robust turnout. We had a very robust conversation about the project as it was proposed at that point, which was entirely as a fossil fuel project. It was the commission which made the recommendation to City Council to pursue clean energy alternatives to that fossil fuel plant. So I'm certainly very proud of the work that we did as the commission at that point, and the conversation that we had, and the dialogue that we had with the staff and with the community, who really came out in support of a low carbon or no carbon future for our city. I'm not sure when I look at these alternatives about, sort of going back to that original CEQA process. Why was it that we were required to sort of go through a new CEQA process? I mean, I realize we didn't have to dial it back all the way to the beginning, but what was the reason that we couldn't certify that EIR and then build something slightly different within the envelope of what had been approved in the original EIR?
Commissioner Law, that's something that the city could have done, but these alternatives are, they're not something that had been analyzed. So we did want to be very thorough about it and make sure that we've evaluated the environmental impacts as well as do the engineering work, of course, so that we can understand what these alternatives would be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the things that we discussed as a commission in 2018 was a strong desire and a shared goal to make sure that Grayson was taken offline as soon as possible. Because we know that we have a dirty, polluting gas-fired plant that is obsolete, and we really identified that as a priority. We wanted to make sure that the CEQA process moved forward as efficiently as possible so that we could not only retire the current plant, but get a cleaner alternative on board. So I'm sure that, there were very good reasons to pursue this process to this point, but I just want to reiterate the importance of getting the dirty plant offline, and break ground on what's going to replace it. Do we have an estimate for a groundbreaking at the site?
Commissioner Law, the full notice to proceed would begin in January of 2022.
So
If we could go back to the slide, but I don't know that that means that on January 1st that we're breaking ground. I believe that there's some more detailed engineering work that needs to happen for the actual. Mark, you can correct me if that's different than what I'm understanding.
Yes, and I believe that the beginning of 2022 would be when we would start demolition of the existing facility.
Okay. And in all of these alternatives, is the physical footprint of the plant as reimagined in these alternatives, is it physically smaller? And if so, does it release potential for other uses or other, forms of innovative future technologies that could be used at the center to produce energy in alternative ways? In other words, does the physical, I know that the site is a certain size. I'm not talking about the site getting smaller. I'm just talking about the physical footprint of what would be on the site. Does it get smaller in these alternatives?
Yes, Commissioner Law, Mark Young. We are delaying the 25 megawatts of BESS because we're hoping that the technology will be such that we'll have long-term duration storage. And if we were successful in being able to model all the alternatives, it would give us more room, especially in the boiler building footprint, because we plan on tearing down that building. And if we do tear down that building, it gives us much more room for additional storage-like infrastructure.
Okay. And I'm assuming that when these alternatives come out in greater detail, we will have information on the carbon footprint of each alternative and the amount of
That's part of the environmental review, air quality,
right.
And carbon. Yes.
Okay. And the actual megawatts associated with each one.
Do we mean the amount of megawatts that are produced on a yearly basis, or are we talking capacity?
The amount of megawatts produced on a yearly basis, or both? Both.
Oh, I guess I put I asked for that one. So the capacity is about the same. So the alternative for 8A and 8BC, while we don't have definitive numbers yet, it's going to be close to that 93 megawatts. So we anticipate the thermal capacity to be similar. And depending on what the model runs are during the analysis, we could figure out an estimated idea of how many megawatts are going to be needed to be run locally, keeping in mind that the desire is to keep those units off and available for contingency reserves and during the times when import capability doesn't meet our load.
Okay. Okay, I think those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Jazz Madarian, any questions or comments?
No, I think Commissioner Lal asked all my questions. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Kadikian, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Okay. So I was also on that commission back in 2018 when we went through that EIR process. And
apologies, Commissioner, my apologies. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It does. And I recall the participation of all the Glendale stakeholders in that thing, in that meeting. My question is with regards to, again, similar to what Commissioner Lal asked, with regards to whether a new EIR is needed. If I recall, we recommended, and I think City Council followed that, our recommendation was to approve mostly battery and some ICE engines. It was like 4, 5 or 6 smaller ICE engines, and it seems like we're changing it to Wärtsilä engines. Is a new EIR necessary is my real question, whether the cost of spending 7 million or whatever that's going to take necessary, or could we move without a new EIR?
Commissioner Kadikian and Commissioner Lal, I'm sorry, I think I might have misunderstood Commissioner Lal's question previously. This is not a new EIR. This is an analysis of additional alternatives under the existing EIR. So this is really the most expeditious process to conduct the environmental evaluation, get the input, and proceed with the project. It's not a brand new EIR.
Okay, great. My objective is to move it as fast as possible. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments at this time.
Okay, very good. I have just a couple of questions about what happens during construction when you just have unit 9 operating? Are we in a threatened position during the construction period itself?
Mr. President, we are in less stable and less reliable position than we would be if the system were back together. We plan on trying to ask our friends, our local area, if we can capitalize on any of the assets that they have during the construction period. We also plan on trying to get the Tesla battery in fast first, so that will minimize our time with just number 9. So the idea would be to install the 200 megawatt hour Tesla battery, give that to us along with number 9 to minimize our need, but we will definitely still need, and we'll have to go to the local utilities to see if they can help us for the year to 3, depending on how long it takes to assess.
How long does it take to do the construction? Is that a 2 or 3 year period?
So typically what we're figuring out, depending on what the alternatives are, because some of the alternatives, if we were in alternative 6A, we would have to remove pylons, and it would take a lot longer to construct than if we were to pick, say, 7 or 8, or I'm sorry, 7A or 8. So we are anticipating about a year for demolition, which would also include the separation of number 9, and just less than 2 years of construction for the new facility. And that would be the ICE engine and the supporting infrastructure around it. We plan on getting the Tesla battery like 6 months after demo, if we can.
What is the expected life of the Wärtsilä units, and then do we amortize the plant over that period of time? Is that the plan?
The plan is to amortize no longer than the 2045. I guess Mr. Zern at the time indicated that we would amortize it over 20 years. But it would still, the idea is to make sure that we don't have stranded investment after 2045, since it's 100% clean by 2045.
Right. And I take it that and we'll see this when we see the full environmental review, but I take it that the environmental impacts of the Wärtsilä units is less than the environmental impact of extending the lives of 8A and 8BC. Is that correct?
I would like to reserve my judgment until I see the findings, but typically the ICE engines are best available technology. So I would have to say that they were probably the cleanest. It would be like buying a 2020 Mercedes as opposed to a 1970 Mercedes.
Right. How many more years do we get out of those that 1970 Mercedes? If alternative 8 was elected,
so
how many more years?
So alternative 8, we're sending back a couple of the engines to get repaired and have ready for this summer. That part is fine. That's like rebuilding your engine. So if you rebuild your engine, the engine's fine, but where's the transmission? How's the steering? How's the suspension? All of those things are old. So what we would do in alternative 8 is we would make all brand new ancillary equipment. So the only thing that would be old would be those jet engines. And City of Pasadena is doing something very similar with the exact same jet engines that we have. And they've had positive reviews, which led us to potentially looking at that as a solution.
And I would imagine that would be a lower cost alternative, repowering those than building new.
It is typically, it's going to be less, but I don't know how much less. Because we would have to put boilers in for combined cycle. So I'm not sure. The short answer is yes, it's cheaper, but I'm not sure how much cheaper yet until we do the analysis.
It may be somewhat cheaper, and it may just lock us. It may have us locked in for a shorter period of time than the 20 years, potentially.
One of the options with the Wärtsilä engines is that technology is open for renewable natural gas and hydrogen as a fuel source. The old engines are not being modified in that way since they are very old. So that's the only downside to that.
Thank you for that explanation. I have no further questions. Shall we move to the next report?
The next item is 3B, the Clean Energy Program Update.
President Flanagan, members of the commission, Michael DeGhetto, Interim General Manager for Glendale Water and Power. And I'm excited to bring this report to the commission. It has, it provides some context of kind of where we've been and what we've been doing in this area. And it's really a group effort to put this together because, if we could go to slide 2, Catalina. Because we've been doing a lot, both on, when we talk about the demand side, that kind of means the amount that the customers use. When we use that word demand in a couple of different contexts, there might be the electrical demand, which is like the megawatts that we need from the power plant, but it's also just the total customer demand. And then we've done a lot in procurement of clean energy as well. And so this report, we're going to look ahead to help, provide context and solicit input on how we move ahead with our clean energy future. Catalina, we did. So, it's historically what it's done, meeting electrical demands, kind of early adoption of some of the some of the things related to the renewable portfolio standards, and what our existing energy efficiency programs are, and like the new programs we're coming up with, as well as a look at the net energy metering programs and how that's impacted retail sales, just to like kind of proves out that what we've been doing has been helping. And I'm going to turn over several parts of this to Craig Keenan, our Assistant General Manager of Business Services, and Mark Young, our Assistant General Manager of Power Management. And then at the end, I'll have some more comments on one of the programs and just to kind of close it out. But they're going to go ahead and give the presentation and switch back and forth. So I won't be stopping kind of in the middle to talk about that. So the next person up is Mark. Mark, you're on mute.
It's only been a year. I figure I should be able to know that I keep pressing that mute button. Sorry. GWP has long supported California's clean energy goals. Two examples, the Hoover Power Project, which we were original signers of in 1931, and the Pacific DC transmission line that brings renewables from the Pacific Northwest. Glendale was also an early adopter of renewable energy goals for its energy supply portfolio. Next slide, please. This slide shows that GWP's significant progress in developing its renewable energy portfolio. In 2003, the City Council adopted Glendale's first RPS goals of 20% renewable energy by 2017, with a stretch goal of 23%. In 2010, you'll see that the CEC disallowed large hydro from the calculation, so there was a decrease of that orange line, and then we started to move on up into the 40 plus range, even without Hoover. Next slide, please. And I believe that we talked about the renewable portfolio standard last month. So I'm lucky I'll skip this one, and I'll turn it over to Craig Keenan.
Okay, I think I'm off of mute. Can people hear me?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
President Flanagan, I'm Craig Keenan, AGM of Business Services, and energy efficiency and local renewable programs are in my area here. So I'm just going to talk briefly on the next few slides about history, and then I'll turn it back over to Mark. In this first slide, I just want to talk about that we've offered financial incentives for our energy efficiency and local solar projects since about 2000. Since that time, we've invested about 46 million in energy efficiency programs and 18 million in local solar projects. Since 2001, our energy efficiency programs have averaged close to 12.5 gigawatt hours in first year savings and just over 1,900 gigawatt hours in cumulative life of measure savings. If you go to the next slide. Local solar, we were one of the first utilities to have a local solar rebate program in California. We worked with the Glendale Community College to install I think it's 43 kW system in around 2007. In local solar generation, as of this year, in all of our installations, including some that we didn't provide incentives for, some people went in and installed their own systems, but we're generating about 27.5 gigawatt hours in local clean renewables. We'll go to the next slide. This slide is, I just wanted to be able to put in context where we're at and where we've projected to be, because the ultimate measure of how effective your programs are is, what does it do to retail sales? So in 2003, when we first did our renewable portfolio standard projections, we were projecting retail sales to grow at about 1.5% a year. Somehow I lost the slide here. I don't know.
Sorry, give me 1 second. We're having some technical issues.
Sorry about that. And anyways, the slide was showing you the projected retail sales were going to grow from 2003 to about 2017. The growth was 1.5% a year. We are supposed to get to about 1,300 gigawatt hours by 2017. If you continued that projection, it would be about 1,366 gigawatt hours in sales. The slide was showing that from 2003 to 2009, our retail sales actually did grow at that pace. So here, we were almost back there. But then,
If you can go to slide 9.
Thank you. There you go.
so you can see that sales actually grew at that pace between 2003 and 2009. But in 2009, a lot of things came together. Our programs, our energy efficiency and renewable programs started to mature. There's a lot of policy things going on at the state level. Some, they started requiring reporting of energy efficiency savings and targets and those kinds of things. They also did a major overhaul to the Title 24 standards, which increased the lighting efficiency standards and HVAC standards, which in effect made our energy efficiency programs more efficient because the standards were a lot higher. But if you look at the difference between the I want to say I'm colorblind, but I'm going to guess here, the red line and the one below it, it's about 2,100 gigawatt hours. So it's roughly equivalent to the life of measures savings that we had calculated for our programs over the same period. Not to say that the climate and population and other factors can influence sales. This is just, you would expect if you have effective energy efficiency and solar programs, that you would see this kind of graph. That's what I'm trying to show here. That's that part of the presentation. I turn it back to Mark Young. He's going to talk a little bit more about the repower and the EIR and those kind of things, and then I'll talk to you again in a little while.
So Catalina, since we just had the presentation on Sql, I think slide 10, 11, 12, and 13 would just be reiterating what we spoke about previous. So these are the clean energy programs. We have Franklin Energy, the demand response program. We have Lime Energy Efficiency Program. We have the Sunrun virtual power plant, and those three things we call the DER programs, and that was an essential component in being able for us to be able to reduce the thermal footprint over at Grayson or in the Energy Control Center. We'll be talking, Craig or Mr. Keenan will be talking about the COSA, which is the cost of service analysis. We'll be talking about solar and storage development on city-owned property. And at the end, we'll give you a quick update on the 100% clean by 2030 analysis. And Mr. Keenan, back to you.
Well, that was great. Since you were going to talk about those other slides, but that's fine. So the Franklin Demand Response Program is one of the three clean energy programs we've been looking at for a couple of years now. The Franklin program is a commercial and residential demand response. The residential program relies on smart thermostats, and it will also offer a marketplace where customers can go and buy energy efficiency and water conservation measures. The cost of the Franklin contract is about 7.6 million over 4 years. By year 4, the program's looking to ramp up to 10 megawatts of demand response. And that capacity will be provided over 15 peak load events per year. Next slide. So as I had stated, the residential is a smart thermostat program. There's a couple different ways customers can participate. There's the bring your own thermostat program, where if you already have a Wi-Fi enabled smart thermostat in your home, you can get a $50 incentive to enroll. If you don't have that compatible thermostat, you can go to the marketplace and buy one with a $100 rebate towards that thermostat. The commercial program will target, larger customers, greater than 50 kW demand. And what will happen is Franklin will go out, audit the facility, go over with the on-site engineer if they have one, and try and identify things that could be manually or automatically reduced during a demand response event. And customers will be paid an annual incentive based on how much they participate during the year. Next slide. So the demand response season will be June to October. It'll be a maximum of 60 hours of DR, 15 events, 4 hours per event. As I stated, the residential is automated through the thermostat. Opt-outs are permitted. The commercial DR is auto or manual options, and opt-outs will be permitted. For commercial, it's not really an opt-out. If they choose not to participate, they just won't get paid for that event. So next slide. As far as the Franklin program, the contract's been executed, and implementation efforts are already underway. We had a formal kickoff meeting in January, and at that meeting, GWP staff and Franklin staff worked together to develop a detailed program marketing and implementation plan. And the program is on track to launch for customer enrollment on April 5th, 2021. Next slide. So the second program that we're looking at is the Lime Energy Efficiency Program. It was initially approved by City Council in October of last year. It would provide energy efficiency audits and upgrades to local businesses. The initial design limited customers' size to 150 kW and below. It had a 7-year ramp up. Measures would last about 12 and a half years. We were looking at about to max out at savings at 35,000 megawatt hours a year. And at the time, the not to exceed contract amount was about 18.9 million. Next slide. So since then, we've had a number of conversations with Lime. We actually had one last Thursday where we finally came to an agreement on some modifications to the program. We opened the program up to pretty much all business customers, but there would be a split between small, medium, and large. So originally it was going to be 2/3 of the program would be small, medium, and 1/3 would be large. After some discussions on Thursday, we've kind of settled it. It'd be more like 60% small business, medium business, and 40% large. We will get 36,500 megawatt hours at the end of 7 years, and that's a little bit more than the original design, about a 4.3% increase. The price actually goes down about 5%, the total contract amount, and we're hoping to launch this program in May, if not May, June. So the next third one is the Sunrun virtual power plant, and I'll let Mark take over.
So the Sunrun virtual power plant, Basically, what it's going to be solar generation, and it's going to be attached with battery storage. It's going to be installed on approximately 3,400 single-family and multifamily housing properties, and 100% of the solar output would be coming to Glendale Water and Power, and we would be able to dispatch the storage or the battery as needed. Next slide, please. You could see that on the virtual power plant capacity of 25.25 megawatts, that would be the size of the battery for a 2-hour discharge. So we would be able to capitalize a maximum of 50 megawatts, 50 megawatt hours, excuse me, to shave the peak. The maximum solar is about 37 megawatts. So we would receive that as the sun shines. And like I said, it would come directly to us. And those are the expected megawatt hours. Next slide, please. So we've presented this slide before, but I find this to be rather informative on what you could do with solar and how we anticipate using the virtual power plant solar battery concept. So while these numbers are a little bit confusing, I think if you take a look at it enough, you'd be able to understand it. And if you look at the first set of blue bars going down, that would be the energy from the solar that would be charging the battery. So we would not be receiving that energy. It would be charging the battery in preparation for us to be able to utilize it later on in the day. Once the battery is charged, then we would be getting the solar production onto our distribution system, and that would be the blue bars going up. As we start getting into the sunset, you can see that the blue bars start to fall off, and that's just common sense. The sun is starting to set. But our peak is usually after the sun, as the sun's setting, if not after the sun has set. So what we do is we start to discharge that battery, and as we start discharging that battery, you can see the red bar would be the discharge of the battery. We would be able to discharge that battery, effectively reducing our peak load, which is the gray dashed line, to an effective green dotted line. And we would be able to use that green dotted line to meet our load with either thermal generation if we needed it locally, or preferably use our transmission lines for import capability. Next slide, please. So, virtual power plant. We've spent a lot of time trying to develop this concept with Sunrun, who's very excited because it's a new type of project. We're looking at it as a virtual power plant, but as a PPA for us. And we've negotiated price from 245 million down to about 228 million, which you can see is a reduction in solar price of about 8.8%, capacity price by about 8.3%, and it integrates to about 6.9%. So we've been successful in doing what Councilmember Najarian asked us to do, which was go back to them and try to reduce the cost. So we've been very successful on that, and we've actually increased the amount of megawatts for the solar capacity, which will help us. This actually goes hand in hand with the Tesla battery that we have at the EOC, the Energy Operations Center. Since it's going to be 50 to 75 megawatts, where it's going to be 200 to 300 megawatt hours, we could use this excess solar to help charge our batteries so that we can shift the load into the night, so we would become greener. Let's see, where are we? So like I said, over the past few months, we've been busy working with Sunrun on the details and logistics of the program, as well as following out the CEC's direction, the City Council's direction to negotiate best possible price. One of the main stumbling blocks in this negotiation is getting CEC approval, which is the California Energy Commission approval for this concept. Right now, Sunrun is working with CEC to get the credit for Category 1 renewables as the solar is being generated and consumed at the same time. It meets all the criteria. We just have to go through the legwork and get the CEC's blessing. There's a lot of technical issues going on. There's many groups. It's 4 or 5 groups that Sunrun and Glendale are working together to try to figure out the logistics, the contract pricing, etc. And we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk about the cost, and Mr. Keenan will talk about the cost of service.
So can everybody hear me? I think I'm off mute. Mr. President, commission members, I'll talk a little bit about the COSA process and why we're doing one. If you remember back in September, October, I think we did some presentations for you, but I know in October 2020, we presented a preliminary rate impact for the clean energy programs. That was, I believe we're looking at a 4.4% one-time rate increase at the time. That analysis was based on the 2018 COSA, which was based on primarily 2017 data, so it was pretty old. And we expressed some concerns at that time, given the COVID impacts that would have been on that analysis. We are seeing decreased sales projections since before 2018. But in 2018, at the time, we thought that sales might turn back to up and we might see some increases. Those never materialized. We need to look at cash reserve impacts, and we did defer a rate increase. The 1% rate increase this year was deferred for a year. That was an annual impact of about 2.2 million in revenues, I believe, and that's ongoing. So these are some issues that we brought up at the time, and let's go to the next slide. So at that meeting, City Council directed us to go back and update the COSA and refine the rate impact analysis for the clean energy programs. We contracted with New Gen Strategies and Solutions to help us with that study. There'll be 4 phases to the study. We're currently in the first phase, which is the financial forecast model. You develop your forecast. They have an Excel-based model that we're going to use to develop scenarios. Then you look at your costs and how they get distributed across the customer classes. The third step is rate design. And then the fourth step is reports and presentations. Next slide. So, in a little bit out of order here, some key variables for the COSA are your capital plan, your bonded and pay-go plan, and your projected O&M costs, including power supply. Well, in the 2018 COSA, we had certain assumptions about bond and how much pay-go a year. Well, since then, I'll go to the first bullet. Since then, there's been a number of different bondable capital projects that are actively being considered. Mark mentioned the Glendale switching station. We also have the GWP-owned solar/storage program that will be talked about in next. Additional battery storage around the city. All these things would feed into the COSA analysis on whether they were pay-go or bonded, how long the bond would be, the interest rate, things like that. So our plan is we're going to finish the model. We're going to finish the financial inputs into the model. We'll run some various scenarios. You know, is it a $470 million bond and 10 million in pay-go? And what does that look? Or if it's just the minimum $340 million bond with some other number for pay-go, maybe 20 million. But we'll run various scenarios to see how we could optimize, you know, the plan and minimize the cost of the clean energy programs. But that we hope to be able to come back to, if not to this body and to City Council in a month, two at the latest, with some results to share, and then we can take advice and input and you know, go back and tweak the model before we go out to the public and do official meetings and such. So that's the COSA presentation. The next slide, I think. Okay, I don't.
All right. Oh, President Flanagan, members of the commission. So the other thing that we're working on is looking at city sites where we can install solar, and if possible, at some sites, if it makes sense, to put energy storage there as well. We have an owner's engineer helping us with the Civic Center parking structure, you know, and that one requires a structural analysis and a look at about if there needs to be any seismic upgrades. And it'll be more of a typical design, bid, build type of project. So we'll have plans and specs. We'll go out to bid, get a contractor to install this stuff. And then the same thing, we've got an owner's engineer on board to look at the rest of the city properties and do an assessment of what sites make sense. And again, do the traditional design, bid, build type of process to do plans and specifications. And this consultant's also going to look at how putting the energy storage of these facilities out on our distribution grid, how it's going to impact the grid. Because really right now, you know, our grid isn't really set up that way to have energy come on and off within different parts of it. So the consultant's going to help us with that as well. And Catalina, I think one more slide. This will be Mark.
Sure. We plan on producing the Ascend Analytic, we call it the 100% clean energy by 2030 report. We plan on having that out by March 30th to council. So we'll do the best that we can to give it to you maybe next month. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that we can get it done by the 30th. And if so, then we'll get it to you as soon as possible.
And, you know, President Flanagan, so that wraps up our presentation. We're also getting this to council tomorrow. And then the following week, we'll be back with recommending award to that consultant to help us with the city-owned properties analysis.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's go to questions and comments. Commissioner Lal?
Hi. This is a lot to take on. Thank you for a very complete, a very comprehensive presentation. I'm sure that I will wake up in the middle of the night with lots of questions. I don't have any right now, but I'm going to continue to ruminate while the other commissioners state their questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jasmadarian, questions or comments?
No, a very good presentation. I really appreciated it, but no questions. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Kadikian?
Yes, hello. Yes, with regards to the hiring of the consultant for installation of photovoltaics on the city property, I recall we had done a similar study maybe about 8 or 10 years ago as to which sites were feasible for solar installs. And I don't know if there's any and the current consultant that you are considering, is he going to build on that information? I know the information may be old, but the sites, the locations have not changed that much. Maybe that's something that you could use to transfer, and the new consultant can build on that. That's just my comment on that regards.
Commissioner Kadikian, I would say that we'll build on that. But one of the things that's changed, I think, since that time from 8 years ago, is it really makes sense even to put in smaller systems. Maybe 8 years ago, we were really focused on larger systems. And now, just with trying to get to 100%, we're going to look at more sites. So the priorities might have changed in that time span.
That's a good idea. No other questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Peterson, questions, comments?
First of all, I would also like to echo others' comments that was very good and comprehensive presentation, and certainly, as has been stated by Commissioner Wall and others, it's a lot to take in. So I don't have a whole lot. Just one kind of question or clarification, and if it's not something that we want to do now, I'm happy to do it offline. But just on the slide where you're covering up on the retail sales, I think, Craig, versus the projected versus what were the actuals. Did I understand correctly that you were saying that the gap between projected and actuals is driven primarily by gains in efficiency, so that we were having the same let's say, projected line, that we met the projected line of use, the amount of electricity or the electrical devices that would be, but for the fact of having efficiency gains in these kind of things, that's why the demand from generation has gone down. Did I understand that correctly?
It might have gotten a little confused because that's when all the slides kind of went haywire. That's not exactly what I was trying to convey. There was a projected line based on best history back in 2003 that our sales could grow at 1.5% going forward. And then we had our actual. When I mentioned that there was gains in efficiency, that would have been that it basically helped our programs accelerate, because we were out there pushing new air conditioning, new lighting, and things like that. And then the state upgraded their Title 24. So our programs were now pushing more efficient lighting and more efficient air conditioning. So I have to give some credit to the state that they upgraded those the Title 24. There was a lot of other policy changes, but I like to think our programs, we had expanded our programs, we expanded our outreach. In 2009, we started the O-Power behavioral program, which we get considerable amount of savings from. We started our really pushing our business energy solutions program, which worked with larger businesses to do rather huge, retrofit projects, and that produced a lot of savings. So I would suggest that, yes, our programs pushed sales down because that's what energy efficiency is supposed to do. That doesn't necessarily mean that customer bills were then higher, but the average usage went down, our sales went down.
Well, thank you for that. So it sounds like we're attributing to the lion's share, the majority explanation for the gap between projected and actuals is that programs for pushing efficiency is what made the impact. I guess the question
our programs probably would have seen some continued growth. Would it have been 1.5%? I don't know. Who can say? But
so I guess that was a thought that came to mind is, looking to the future and doing projections is much more of an art than often it is a science. So I guess have you looked at doing an exercise that said, if we went and backed out these efficiency gains on an assumption basis, so we know now historically X amount of air conditioning units were changed out and an average efficiency was increased by X percent. And we know that, you know, A number of large businesses did B number of retrogrades for an average of C reduction in usage or increase in efficiency. And so if you then back those efficiency gains out, would you in fact have found a pro forma that was close to your projections, so that you would then know that it was most likely these efficiency gains versus maybe some other factor that may be coming in, which may need to be taken into consideration for projections going forward to ensure that an assumption that it's the efficiency gains without testing that assumption in some way. Is that something that it's an exercise that's doable?
Well, it depends if we have the data. I know that we report to the CEC every year on our programs, and there's a certain level of detail in that data. It might take a bit of heavy lifting to.
Well, or the flip side is that you could just take a look to say in a backward look, if you find that the amount of efficiency gains that would need to have happened to create the actual gap, is that a reasonable number? Is it believable?
Yeah.
If it turned out to be a 70% efficiency gain, that probably is not believable. If it's a 7% efficiency gain, very believable. So you could then, without looking into the data, just try to test the reasonableness of the assumption.
Sure. The way I
just a thought, you don't have to, I don't mean to get into this is kind of in the weeds, but
I know.
A thought that I came in, you have such a difficult job of, you know, not only running the actuals of what's happening, but then trying to do these kind of projections. It was just a thought that came in as you struggle with, you know, the challenges going forward.
Is the life measure energy savings that we reported to the CEC over that time period was roughly equal to the difference between the upper line and the actual retail sales. So it kind of verifies it, but it's not, you know, it's not like you said, you can't be 100% sure which variable was the big one. But
well, thank you for that. That's helpful.
Very good. And there is a huge body of work out there in evaluating energy efficiency programs and validating the gains. But I think we can all be very proud of what GWP has done and what the state has done. The state has done a terrific job of decoupling sales and revenues. But just a couple comments on the presentation. Again, thank you all for it. Michael, I liked going all the way back to the Hoover Dam in 1931. And it's just all of the energy efficiency gains, Craig Keenan and team, and the solar successes, I think, are really impressive. I came to LA to be the director of energy efficiency for LADWP, so this is my particular interest. And I think we would all agree that there's been great gains and that there's also great opportunities for a lot more what they call local distributed energy resources in the form of efficiency and demand response and solar, et cetera. I'm impressed by your negotiating skills. It sounds like with both the Lime contract and the SunPower contract, you brought the cost down and the expected savings up, or the capacity contributions up. So I don't know whether that's the fact that there's 4 AGMs that are just a really strong front line that's tackling, or whether this is a sign of the times in the pandemic. Is there any simple explanation to that?
Well, I just think Mark and Christine and I did we squeezed them.
Well, and we do have to give credit for Christine Godinez's help.
Absolutely.
She's helped all of us with these sorts of things. So.
Very good. Very good. Well, I can imagine that, having gotten to know Christine just a little bit in these meetings. On to the Sunrun project. Again, congratulations on bringing the prices down and the performance up, Christine and company. That's good stuff. And then the bucket 1 recs that you're trying to assure from the California Energy Commission. is this the first time that they would have assured bucket one RECs for distributed energy resources? I mean, I'm wondering whether aren't all the FIT programs in the same camp and assure bucket one RECs? Does anybody know that?
Yes, this is Young. I believe that this is the first time it's been tried at this level. If you had big local installations, it's a lot easier to quantify. But when we have 3,400 installations that we're trying to act as one installation, it becomes a daunting task. So we believe that it's the first, but it meets all the criteria for a bucket one product.
Right. Mark, thank you for sending me the cheat sheet on all the RECs, because I did read that in all the criteria, it certainly appears that our VPP does fulfill that, or does fulfill those criteria. So that's exciting. Couple more questions, just for folks that might be listening. Pike. Fair to say that a customer will just continue paying their regular GWP bill as if they didn't have solar and storage? They would just pay the same bill?
Are you talking about Sunrun?
Yes.
Yeah.
Under the Sunrun, the value proposition for the customer is they'll get $15 a month for allowing us to put the system on their roof. Plus, they'll get access to the battery during any outage. I believe it's a couple hours worth of power. The $15, how it's set is if you went out as a private customer and contracted with a Sunrun through a lease arrangement to put solar on your roof, the difference between what you would pay Sunrun and your electric bill would be about $15 a month. So that's why we give the 15, and then we get the power instead of instead of the customer paying Sunrun. So it's a win-win for everybody. I'm sorry, I think you're muted.
Sorry, Craig. Sorry about that. So the customer gets a credit on their bill for $15.
Right.
Then they're paying the normal rates to Glendale Water and Power for their consumption.
Yes.
Right. And then is it fair to say that the direction that we're going then is that we're still going to continue to support people that decide to invest in their own solar systems?
Well,
and then this is just an option for them?
Well, part of our discussion with Sunrun, subject to city council approval, is that we got the price right. Part of it was based on us not having the incentive program going forward, which quite frankly is rather low. In most other utilities in the state no longer offer those incentives. I think LA and GWP are the only two that I know of in Southern California that still offer incentives. I think they automatically mute. It detects whether you're talking, and then they automatically mute you if you don't talk for
I'm on these calls all day long, and this is the only one that keeps taking me away. But I guess that's a good thing. But Craig, and I guess this is a policy decision that's going to be coming down the pike, is whether to eliminate incentives for net energy metered solar systems. But are you leaning? You're not leaning towards disallowing net energy metered systems. You would just take away the incentives, just like Edison has.
If a customer wanted to put a net metered solar system on their roof, let them. We have people do it without incentives now. In fact, I think if we went back and looked, there's maybe it's half and half. Customers put the systems on without an incentive.
Right. So, I agree with that. I am one of your customers that got the incentive, and it was very, very, very generous, generous indeed. So, in the COSA, this cost of service analysis, which just sounds like a torturous document and exercise to figuring out what the.
Yes, I've been through about 4 of them.
It's a brain deadening thing. But let me ask you this, Craig. You've been through it before. Are we seeing more societal values getting into the benefit side of the cost benefit equation? For instance, better air quality, better health, potential independence, resilience from wildfire conditions, things like that. Or is that any of that stuff coming in, or is it all just dollars and cents?
This is the finance model. It's concrete dollars and cents.
Well, even in the world of finance, we call these things externalities that are not made into the equation. So I guess that would just be a comment of mine, is that I think as we're all becoming more conscious of the climate emergency that's facing us, that clearly it isn't just dollars and cents anymore. We've got to make policies that are based on the health of the planet and our kids and their kids. Quick question on pay as you go. I take it that's a lower cost form of I don't want to say financing, but paying for something because you don't pay interest on it. Is that right?
President?
Yes, pay down is it's basically you're using your cash reserves to pay for your capital that year.
President Flanagan, I would say, though, it's lower cost overall, except for the revenue requirement is higher. So if you do pay-go, you have to collect $1 to pay $1. Whereas if you finance something, you can collect over time.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. And then the 100% clean by 2030, that sounds very exciting. And I guess it's just the way your timing is worked out that's going to council before it's coming to the commission. I'm hoping that the commission is ever more valuable to the council by reviewing these things before it gets to council. But was that just a timing issue in this case, or is that something that council had specifically requested, or how did that work out?
Yes, President Flanagan, this is Mark Young. I believe that it was a timing issue. They've been pushing to get it done as fast as possible, so they want to see the results, and we're calling it the 100% clean by 2030. That was the goal, to try to move in the direction to see if we could meet that goal of 2030.
Right.
So that's why we're calling it the 100%. We don't have the final details as to how much we can get or how close to 100% we can achieve.
I commend you even for looking at it. It's fantastic. And as we look around the world, countries are achieving this goal. It's quite fantastic. Thank you. That's all my questions and comments. Can we move to the next item, please?
Could I just add a comment before we move to the next item? President Flanagan, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, please.
I do think this is, no problem. Sometimes I need a few minutes to kind of ruminate on things when we have such a detailed and extensive presentation like this. As we saw in Texas, the failure of a power system can lead to not just impacts to quality of life, but actual loss of life. We're very lucky in Southern California to live in a relatively mild climate. But clearly, we have heat events which are potentially life-threatening. So having a resilient power system isn't just a matter of convenience and keeping the lights on. It can be a matter of life and death for people. And having a carbon neutral or 100% clean power system is our collective goal, because that will in turn reduce the opportunities and chances for terrible weather, right? And climate disruption that leads to terrible weather. So this is kind of like a feedback loop where terrible weather leads to impacts on our power production, which then, ramps up the consumption of fossil fuels, which then again impacts our weather. So we want to break that cycle. And programs like this are a really important part of breaking that cycle. And so I applaud all of you for your efforts. And I think you reflect not just where our state is going, but where the residents and the ratepayers of our city want to go. And we want to have a resilient climate, and we want to have a resilient power grid, and these very innovative ideas are going to be the way to get there. So thank you, and I do look forward to continuing to hear how these programs roll out. And the only other question that occurred to me during this discussion was for people who, like myself and the commission president, who already have solar on their roofs in Glendale, how do we fit into this? Because obviously, I can't do a Sunrun system. I already have a solar array on my roof. But could I, for instance, participate in the demand response portion? So what is the role for people who already have solar systems?
Well, I guess I can. Definitely, you can participate in the Franklin Demand Response Program. We have other programs in terms of public benefit programs that can help save energy in your house that you can participate in. And I would have to assume that going down the road, we will have to come up with some sort of a retrofit model where we put battery, have incentives to put batteries with existing solar, and then somehow connect them through our auto grid system, and we'll have then a much larger battery virtual power plant at some point.
Very good. Thank you. Are there other commissioner comments or questions before we move on to, are there any oral communications?
We don't have any callers.
We don't have any callers. Shall we go to the next item, please, Catalina?
Yes, item 5A, 5, agenda forecast.
Okay. Has everybody reviewed the agenda forecast? I did. Are there any that people want to have put on the agenda forecast this time?
Yes, since we're talking about reliability today, especially with Texas fresh on our minds, I was hoping that the power and water staff could do a summary reliability report for us, especially if there is a catastrophic event, such as the USGS forecasted with the water agencies of 7.8 on the San Andreas Fault. How would we get power? How are we going to deal with the power issues? And how long it will take to get the power back online, the transmission systems back online. And then as far as water goes, how you would be pumping water to the customers. Do you have enough emergency generators, portable pumps, that type of thing, or interconnections to get the water to us? And then one final question, how often do you exercise? Do you have tabletop exercises with your staff so that they are prepared for such an event to help the retail customers? Thank you.
Thank you. So that ties to the comment I made at the very beginning of the meeting about reliability, and in light of what we've just seen unfold in Texas the past month. Would that fold nicely together with that reliability report that I think is on the agenda forecast for April, or is that totally different? What is that report? That reliability report that we're going to have?
Generally, this is Craig. Generally, I think you're talking about the report that's given every year where they talk about, the number of outages during the year, the length of the outages, the causes of the outages. It's generally that kind of report.
As opposed to a preparedness. So maybe we could have that. Maybe we could have the sort of the state of reliability at GWP and then get into a whole report on emergency preparedness along the lines that Commissioner Nasdajarian is recommending.
I'd like to suggest that maybe we keep those separate, only because the one that's coming up, Mr. Scores' group usually works on that, and it's a very standardized set of acronyms.
Okay. So
SAIDI and all these sorts of things that we talk about pretty regularly. And then maybe we come in one of those notes that did have a lot of items in it for a water and an electric kind of reliability. If that's okay.
yeah. So who's got the calendar for this? Who maintains the calendar?
I do.
I do.
Carolina.
Is this something that might fit in a May meeting, or where does it go?
We could put it in the May meeting.
Would that be okay with you, Commissioner Jasmine? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one of these tough discussions that we need to have, right?
Right. And also, does the reliability change with the new cleaner power so that we have increased reliability? That would be nice to know.
Okay. Other agenda items? Hearing none, shall we go to the next item?
Item 6, adjournment.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
I second.
Any seconds? We're done. We're out of here. Great meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.